Welcome to another episode of Mac Related Things. I'm your host, Jim Fair, macrelatedthings@gmail.com. Today I'd like to tell you one of the secrets of the Mac OS administrator, the clean install. What is a clean install? Why do we do it? How often should we do it? What are the good things that come out of it, and what bad things can come out of it? Stay tuned for more. A clean install doesn't mean reinstalling the operating system. It means installing the operating system from a known good source to put the machine into what we call a known good state. It's all about repeatable success. You develop a track record with a particular installer so you know it's reliable. For example, let's say we have a Mac that's having kernel panics. What's a kernel panic? It's an error that causes the OS to stop in its tracks and display a giant error message on the screen. And you may see the word panic in there. The problem is so severe that the computer cannot continue. The cause often can be hardware or software. We can use the clean install to find out which it is. If the clean install makes the kernel panic go away, then we know it's the OS, software basically, that was at fault. If it doesn't go away, then, and we have a track record with that installer, we can more reasonably conclude that we have a hardware problem. Think of the clean install as part of the scientific method. It helps you by process of elimination. The clean part of it comes when we erase everything down to the hardware level and start fresh. Often a corrupted preference file or font can cause computer issues, so we don't restore any data from our backup while we're testing. We recreate everything fresh, including system preferences and application preferences. This can be tedious but rewarding when you solve problems that would otherwise haunt your system forever. So this is a MacBook Pro 2018, 15-inch. Now before we erase it, there are some things I would recommend doing. Number one, you've got to have a backup. So you can see I have a backup from this morning. I'm just going to go back up now to make sure that gets updated so it's completely up to date before I erase the machine. I would also recommend going into iCloud and make sure you sign out of it, or at least turn off Find My Mac. That'll save some time. And if you have a Touch ID sensor, you want to go into Touch ID and delete your fingerprint. If you don't, it'll eventually catch up with you and you'll get an error message, fingerprint limit reached. It's a real pain to solve and may require a trip to your service provider to get it fixed. So best delete your fingerprint before you erase. So our backup is done. The next thing to do here is to go to the Finder's Go menu and go to Utilities, or do a Shift Command U. And then we want to run Disk Utility. And if you have the View menu here, click Show All Devices. So there's my solid-state drive backup. I'm going to partition it without destroying my data, and I'm adding a small partition. It's called Untitled right now, but I'm going to change the name to My Volume with a capital M and a capital V, and I want you to do the same. Use that particular name. Should be Mac OS Extended Journaled, and the size should be 13 gigabytes. Hit the Tab key. You can see we're going to end up with this very small partition on our big drive. We click Apply, Partition, and away it goes. Now this will take it some time, 2-3 minutes typically, because it has to make sure there's no files in the way when it repartitions. So it's going to shrink the backup area and then add this little partition, and we're going to use it to create an external USB installer. Now you can add 3 or 4 of these partitions if you want to support 3 or 4 different versions of Mac OS with your external USB installer. I'm just going to add one for Mojave. So while that is happening, I'm going to minimize this. I'm going to go to my applications folder and see Yes, I do have the Mojave installer. Now, what if I didn't have the Mojave installer? So then I would have to go to our web browser and go upgrade to Mac OS Mojave and look for the Apple support article by the same name. You can see the URL ends in HT210190, and you go down to step 4, which is the download. If you still need macOS Mojave, use this App Store link. Because if you go to the App Store, all you're going to find is the current OS, which right now is Catalina, and soon will be Big Sur. So we're going to click Get macOS Mojave. It opens the App Store, and then we can get Mojave, and it'll download it to our apps folder, but I've already done that. And you can see it's 6.05 gigabytes. So if this were Catalina, it would be just over 8 gigabytes. High Sierra, just over 5 gigabytes, and so on. Now, the other thing to look up here while we've got the browser open is how to create external USB installer for Mac OS. And there's another Apple support article, this one here, how to create a bootable installer. And its URL ends in 201372. And very similarly, we don't want to read the whole thing. We just want to go to this create install media command, pick the command for the OS that we're trying to install. So in this case, it would be Mojave. And we're going to copy this. So I'm just going to go right click with my trackpad, copy. I could also go Command C, or I could go up to the edit menu and copy. Now I'm going to hide this. And since I already have it downloaded, I don't have to wait any longer. I can just go into Terminal. Now I do have Terminal down here in my dock, but most people don't. So I would suggest you go to Spotlight and start typing TERM. And there it is. Press return to launch. Command Shift Plus to make your window bigger. You could drag the right edge out and then paste your command. So you can see this command is super user do, or switch user to the super user and do this command. And it's calling upon /applications/install macOS Mojave.app, contents resources, and then there's the actual binary that we're actually talking to. That's the command. And then we're passing it these two parameters, --volume, and the volume is my volume, which is in the volumes directory. That's just how external drives are mounted. They're always in the volumes directory. And you can see it's called my volume. So we're ready to go. Press return, and we're prompted for a password. Now, which password might this be? Well, this is our admin password. So that's my account. It's called admin. Yours might be called your name, what have you. But you want to type in your password. And as you type APPLE, you won't see anything till you press return. Then it says ready to start. We need to erase the volume. So I'm going to go Shift Y to continue. Return. I'm going to zoom out. And you can see that now it's working away. You can also do this with an external USB stick, but it's going to be a lot slower than an external USB solid-state drive. I like this particular drive, the SanDisk Extreme. There's a review on my channel elsewhere. I will put a link up here. Try not to buy it unless it's on sale. I paid just around 200 or a little bit more Canadian, like maybe 229, something like that. Okay, so you can see it erased the disk, it copied data to the disk, it made the disk bootable by copying these boot files, and now our installer is ready. And you can see it's renamed it from my volume. Now it's called Install macOS Mojave. So we are now ready. We've done our pre-work, we've done our backup. We are now ready to reboot with the Option key down if we don't have a T2 chip. And if we do, we want to come up in recovery mode. So how do you know if you have a T2? You go About This Mac, and you click System Report, Click on controller, and if you see Apple T2 security chip, you know you have one. Or basically if you have a fingerprint ID sensor, you know you have one. So for T2 chip owners, we need to do something special before we reboot from this installer. So if you're a T2 chip owner, stay tuned. So we're going to restart in recovery mode by holding down Command R while the machine is starting up. So I'm holding Command R as soon as the screen goes black. And I wait, I keep holding it until I see a progress bar, not just the Apple logo. Wait for the progress bar. It usually comes up below the logo and to the left there. Now we can let go. The machine knows we want to come up in recovery mode. Now if your recovery partition is missing, you may get prompted to select the Wi-Fi network and enter a Wi-Fi password. So you can boot into internet recovery mode, and that's fine. Do that if need be, and doesn't matter to us. Our job here is to disable startup security. So up here in the menu bar, we go Utilities, Startup Security Utility. And we launch this, it says authentication needed. You will need to authenticate as an administrator to change the boot security settings. Enter macOS password. So that's the password for your account on this machine. So there's my account admin, and I'm going to type in my password, which is just simply Apple in lowercase. I usually set that password for setting up Macs, and then once everything is set up, I'll pick a more secure password. So step one, we need to allow booting from external or removable media. And we need to turn Secure Boot off. Now, Apple says you can do it on medium security, but I've found it doesn't work. So I'm going to go no security. You can try medium if you want. Please do not turn on a firmware password by mistake, okay? That has nothing to do with your startup, but you do need to have Secure Boot off and allowed media allow in order to make this work. So we're going to exit the utility. In order for this to take effect, we have to shut down. So we go Apple menu, shut down. And for those of you without the T2 chip, you're just rebooting with the Option key down. So I'm going to reboot or power on with the Option key down until I see the graphical startup manager. And then I'm going to insert my backup drive, which also has our Mojave installer, and we should see it come up as a valid boot device, and there it is. So I'm just going to go right arrow, return. I could also have clicked on it. So now we're booting from the Mojave installer. All that we need to do is wipe the machine and install the OS. Now we've done a clean install. Now what's a clean install? Well, the clean part of it means you've installed from a known good source. You've wiped everything right down to the hardware. So if you had a Fusion drive, you reset the Fusion drive. If you had a solid state drive, you went to the mechanism and you did an erase so that it's rewriting a fresh partition map. Everything on that drive is fresh, installed from a known good source. And ideally, this will put your machine in a known good state. And this will give you power to troubleshoot things. So it's kind of like process of elimination. So if we put our machine in a known good state from a software perspective, and we still have problems, then it's much more likely those problems are due to hardware, right? So if we go into disk utility here, and we have to click View, Show All Devices. Click on the mechanism name and click Erase. And you want to accept the defaults here, so it'd be Macintosh space HD is the traditional name for a Mac volume. You can call it anything you want, but please don't use special characters. You want to accept the format that comes up. which will be either APFS or Mac OS Extended Journal. Don't pick any of these other weird things. And you can see if I try to go to Mac OS Extended, it says, no, we have to use APFS because this is a newer machine. Partition scheme has to be GUID on any Intel Mac. Click Erase. And of course, you've got to have a backup before you do this, right? Otherwise, you've just erased everything with no backup, which would be problematic. Okay, erase process is done. So we have erased not just the container and the volume, we erased the partition map and wrote a brand new one. Now we can do install, go through the usual gestures, continue, agree, select the target drive, install, and we'll pick it up again when the install is complete. Okay, so here is Mojave setup. It knows we're in Canada, Canadian English. I'm going to pick my Wi-Fi and enter my long and convoluted password. What I recommend you do here when you're creating an account after a clean install, to keep it clean, number one, we do not want to restore from backup just yet. Number two, we don't need to turn on any Apple services like iCloud. We want to keep things simple. Say continue. We're not going to transfer any information. We're going to set up iCloud later and all those other things. Going to agree to the software license, and we're just going to create a simple account. I'm just going to call it admin, and I'm going to give it a simple password of Apple, APPLE, APPLE. Hint is the letter A, and I will change this graphic to something a little more amenable, like the Earth, and voila, creating account. So now we're creating our first admin account on this machine, or usually the only account on the machine nowadays. We're not going to do express setup. Click customize. Do not turn on location services. We don't need it unless you have some overriding reason for needing it. I would leave it off for now. Pick your city to get your time zone. There, I nailed Toronto. Turn off analytics. You can always turn it on later. And same goes for Siri. No need to have Siri listening to our every word. And if you want, you can do your Touch ID now, but I'm just going to go continue and set Touch ID up later. Continue. I'm going to go light mode and no True Tone. You can leave True Tone on if you want. And that concludes our time in Apple setup. So here we are at the desktop. Now we would do whatever tests we want to do, install whatever software we want to install to ensure that the problem that we had before we began is solved. Now, once we've concluded that everything is fine, in order to restore from our time machine backup, we can call upon the migration assistance. If you go to Spotlight and go MIGR, migration assistant is here, double click, and we're going to run it. So, strictly speaking now, I'm leaving the realm of clean install behind, and I'm going to restore things from backup. So, restore from time machine backup. There it is. Continue, select, continue. And I've been experimenting with Time Machine's default settings so that I'm backing up all the applications. It's kind of nice that way, but it's not very clean. So you have to be careful you don't restore a problem when you're restoring from your Time Machine backup. So sometimes it's preferable to just manually reinstall everything Try not to move too many preferences over, and you can leave your problems behind. But in this case, I don't really have any huge problems, so this is all just a demo for you guys and gals. So I'm just going to say restore everything. I'm going to set the same password again, Apple. Again, once I'm done setting up a machine, I will give it a more secure password. But for now, the simple password is here. Okay, so we can replace the existing admin account that we just created. We can even keep a copy of it, or we can keep both of them and rename one of them. I would just say replace, because there's nothing on here we need to keep. We have to authorize the change with the admin account password, which in this case is Apple. And continue. And that should start Migration Assistant. Migration Assistant can be a little buggy at times. It doesn't always completely finish its tasks. Sometimes it'll crash. So if at first you don't succeed, erase and try again. In a way, it's cleaner if you do not create an empty user account and instead you restore your account from backup. But that defeats the purpose of the clean install, which is the whole point of this video. So, and Migration Assistant can take us back to where we were by restoring everything, including the account. Anyway, so that's all you need to know about the clean install. Thanks for watching. Fade out.